Welcome to this Health Suppliers segment here on Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you for joining us. Going to have a conversation today with Dr. Sean Ianchulev. He's a professor of ophthalmology at the New York Eye and Ear Infirmary of Mount Sinai. And he's joined today by Dr. Pamela Gallin from Columbia. And they're going to discuss myopia here and the positive results from their recent proof of concept study. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Dr. Ianchulev, why don't you give us a bit of background about yourself? Other than being professor of ophthalmology, are you currently practicing, or are you teaching, or what is your role there at New York Eye and Ear Infirmary?
Yes, I do practice part-time and teach at New York Eye and Ear. Until recently, actually, I was on the West Coast at UCSF as an associate professor there for about 10 years, where I did a lot of the same and have been involved over the years in developing new technologies in ophthalmology, all the way from the early days when I headed the development of Lucentis at Genentech, and more recently with microstent technology, as well as intraocular aberrometry. So I've been involved both on the device and the therapeutics development side, and really collaborating with the industry, as well as interfacing with academia to help develop and bring those new products to patients and physicians.
And Dr. Gallin, a bit about yourself.
I'm a clinical professor of ophthalmology at New York Presbyterian Columbia University Medical Center. I'm director emeritus of pediatric ophthalmology, and I've spent a professional lifetime teaching and seeing patients with a myriad of eye, pediatric, and adult strabismus eye problems. But most recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, I've become very interested in the fact that approximately 20% of kids in schools aren't able to see the blackboard. Most of this, in fact, is from myopia. I am a consultant to New York City Department of Education, and in fact, the moving force behind the fact that New York State is now having Vision Month for the second year, approved by Governor Cuomo. In fact, people do not know that kids can't see. The progression of myopia is a epidemiological tsunami, and it has not been brought to the attention of parents, educators, and kids.
Dr. Ianchulev, talk about the differences between progressive myopia and, I guess, regular myopia, the normal myopia that we see around us on a daily basis.
Yes, that's really a very interesting question, both clinically and for us physicians, but also for patients. Very often when people talk about myopia, and I think the lay term that we use is nearsightedness, and most people associate that with eyeglasses. In some cases, people actually treating this as a benign problem with refractive laser procedures such as LASIK. And that is something that we encounter day in, day out all the time, and most patients are quite familiar. Where things really break down and become different, and it requires a little discerning, and again, something that the awareness really hasn't been there over the past few years, and now that we see the epidemic really growing, I think the forefront is that progressive myopia or myopic progression is a fairly different disease and very distinct. There is currently no FDA-approved treatment for that. And what it really means is that when you have progressive myopia, like the nearsighted can be treated with glasses, in progressive myopia, the eyeball actually stretches and it continues to elongate, to become bigger and bigger. And this is a process that happens in young adulthood, between the ages of 5 all the way to 20. And again, that stretching of the eyeball really has consequences, and probably the simplest consequence is myopia. But there are many other consequences, especially when it continues unchecked for many years and it becomes rather large, the eyeball becomes longer, then people get retinal detachments. And we have actually patients who have really significant myopia as a result of progressive myopia. We're telling them don't get on roller coasters, be careful with contact sports. Again, this is a very different entity, and it can result in really significant consequences such as retinal detachment, retinal atrophy, and many others. So I think that we need to educate both actually physicians and also patients about the differences in progressive myopia and nearsightedness, which we see today. And I'm sure Dr. Gallin probably has a lot of young adult patients who are dealing with that, and it does require some additional education and insight.
Dr. Gallin, do you think that a lack of additional education and insight is the reason why children aren't routinely screened for this condition, or are they routinely screened and just maybe falling through the cracks somehow?
Yeah, it's multifactorial. Children on the books from the American Academy of Ophthalmology, the American Association of Pediatric Ophthalmology, and the American Optometrical Association, it's written that vision screens should be done on annual exams in pediatrician's office and as part of the health screening. Practically speaking, for a lot of reasons not to be discussed here, that does not happen. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, in a recent study in an affluent independent school, 15% of the kids couldn't see. In New York City, and I wrote a New York Times editorial on this, 20 to 25% of the kids couldn't see. But the vision screen programs in general are set up for pre-K, K, kindergarten, and first graders. The idea that everybody entering school should have their vision checked each year is a somewhat radical idea. Until you determine or diagnose the problem, you can't then go to fix it and identify further consequences. So I really do believe it's a national health issue that is not being addressed because everybody assumes that the kids are being checked for vision, and that's not the case.
Dr. Ianchulev, you're the CEO of Eyenovia. You've recently conducted a proof of concept study. Talk about this study and talk about your founding of Eyenovia as well.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about that because, in a way, the technology that Eyenovia is developing is really changing something on a fundamental scale. And something that we really haven't been able to address for many years. In fact, if you think about how we deliver, not only when it comes to myopia, and we can talk about some of the implications for myopia a little bit later, but for any other eye therapy that's given in an eye drop form, as much as innovation there has been in many new therapies that we've developed over the last 100 years, they are all using the standard eyedropper technology from more than 100 years ago. The eyedroppers look a little different, but we're still pipetting drugs into the eye. And again, there's been many, many studies more recently that show that about half of the patients can't even get the eye drop in their eye. It either drips down the cheek or it's just they cannot really get it inside the eye because it's so challenging, particularly if you're a kid or particularly if you're an elderly adult or you have tremor or you have arthritis. It becomes really complicated. So half of the time, people are getting the imprecise dose. And then on the flip side of the coin, if you do get an eye drop in the eye, we're still giving an eye drop which is about 30 to 50 microliters. And again, a lot of us think about an eye drop as a very small quantity of fluid. But in fact, when it comes to your eye, small things are measured on a different scale. Our entire tear film capacity is only 3 to 7, 8 microliters. So we're, even with a single eye drop, we're overdosing the eye consistently by 300% or more. And studies have shown that when even people get an eye drop in their eye, they're actually putting 1 to 2 to 3, sometimes up to 7 eye drops. So again, we're using a very imperfect, very legacy technology, which has worked for us well, but I think today we want a lot more from precision medicine, a lot more for patient outcomes. So I know this technology is unique because we've been able to shrink the inkjet printer technology that really revolutionized document printing and content and allows us to print on a piece of paper small pixels of ink. We're using the same piezo printing technology to actually deliver micro droplets in micro quantities, as much as 3, 4, 8 microliters on a completely different scale. And because it's an inkjet printer technology, it does it very gently and at the same time very efficiently. It can go into the eye and coat the ocular surface in less than 80 milliseconds, which actually beats the blink reflex, which is 100 milliseconds. So it literally beats the blink. And on top of that, it's actually now connected with smart functions and technology that allows to communicate with mobile phones and really record compliance data, so that we can work with the patient. And in the case with myopia, parents would know whether the kids are compliant with therapies that can be sight-saving. So this technology is groundbreaking in a number of ways, and it particularly plays into myopia, where now we know, and actually there was a recommendation and technology review by the Academy of Ophthalmology saying that there is now level 1 evidence, and they rarely do that, to say there is level 1 evidence about a therapeutic, but so many studies have shown that atropine therapeutic can slow down the progression of myopia by almost 60 to 70%. But the only way to achieve that is with very low doses so that you can prevent the consequences and sequelae of side effects in those kids. And that's where Eyenovia's technology really can help unlock that and deliver microdoses in a clinically relevant way so that we can really open up that therapeutic opportunity and make it relevant to our patients.
Dr. Gallin, how can Eyenovia's microdosing technology impact children and families in the clinic?
Very specifically, there are two parts. One is the ease of administration, and two is the dose or amount of drug received. For the first part, kids do not like having eye drops of any variety in their eye, even if they're soothing eye drops. They'd prefer not to take any eye drop. With this with Dr. Ianchulev's technology, it's a greater ease of administration that's less threatening to children, and may I say, all patients. For the second part, in children who are receiving a chronic medication, we're always concerned that over a long period of time, young children whose bodies are forming are absorbing too much of the medication. One of the brilliant parts of this technology is the fact that the actual dose per drop or per application is much smaller. So if you're giving a child a chronic medication, which would be the case in the case of atropine for myopia or some other medications in chronically ill kids, you can this way administer a smaller dose, literally, and there should be fewer side effects from the systemic absorption.
Well, where can we go online and learn some more about Eyenovia and this recent study?
So the study that we have will be, so we've done about 3 studies, and the first 2 studies are already published, and you can go on the Eyenovia website, which is eyenoviabio.com, spelled as EYENOVIA bio.com, and we have the studies there. The latest study, we actually demonstrate almost 90% efficacy of being able to deliver a microdose, which, as I mentioned, with the legacy technology of eyedropper being 40 to 50%, we're really changing the game on that. So this data will be presented shortly and published, I hope, by the end of the year. We're going through the peer review process. But we're very excited about that, and a lot of the information and education information you can find on really the website of Eyenovia, or even if you search Google and you put the word myopia and epidemic, there is a lot of recent epidemiologic data and resources available, including studies from Nature and other very reputable journals that really help us focus in and depixelate that problem and start breaking it down so that we can prevent what we're seeing as an epidemic all the way from Asia to the U.S.
Well, Dr. Ianchulev and Dr. Gallin, thank you. Dr. Gallin, thank you both for coming in today on this Health Suppliers segment. It's been a pleasure. Lots of great information. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at hpr.fm and at healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, listen in, and download at SoundCloud. And be sure and visit our affiliates page at hpr.fm.
Thank you for listening to Health Professional Radio. We're very proud to be an independent broadcaster providing our content free of charge to you, the listener. One of the ways that we're able to remain free and independent is by having people like you become patrons. You can support Health Professional Radio simply by visiting hpr.fm and clicking the button that says Become a Patron. Your patronage of even just $1 a month lets us know that you're there, which in turn makes us more valuable to advertisers. And, of course, if you're able to afford more, then we would certainly appreciate the support. My name is Toby Longhurst from Health Professional Radio. Please visit hpr.fm, click the Become a Patron button, and support us if you can.